All right guys, so by now most of us have a Monstera deliciosa. We've been growing them. They've been exploding in growth and they have these beautiful leaves that we just cannot keep our eyes off of. They're so striking. But one thing that is a little bit unsightly as our Monsteras grow unsightly is these weird things that just start to emanate from the stems of our plants. What are they? Why are they there? And what can we do with them? Well, if you don't know yet, all of these things emanating from the stems are called aerial roots. Now, out in nature, a Monstera deliciosa is kind of a scrambling plant that will cover hillsides, it'll climb up trees, and as it's climbing and vining and scrambling, it produces these aerial roots out of the sides of the stem, which will actually help to root into the tree trunk as it's growing up, or it'll root into the ground as it's scrambling and vining down the side of a slope. And what those aerial roots will do as they root, they provide structure, they provide nutrients, of course, and they will also help the Monstera propel its growth either further up the tree or further along the slope of the hillside. And while those aerial roots continue to search and find something to root into, they serve a very unique purpose of just hanging and dangling off the sides of the stems, in the sense that they will actually absorb the humidity from the air and utilize that absorbed water as a source of nutrition for the plant while it's growing. But for those of us growing our Monsteras inside the home, what can we do with those aerial roots to make our plant look a little tidier, a little neater, or actively utilize those aerial roots to help propel further growth of our Monstera plants? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about 4 different ways you can utilize your aerial roots while growing your Monstera deliciosa. So the first and simplest solution is to just simply let them be. Don't do anything with them. Let them be as they are, and let them just create a nice natural energy wherever your Monstera may be growing. Now that might be all right for some of you, but if you're a little bit more of a tidier houseplant grower like myself, you may be searching for ways to create a little bit more kempt look for your Monstera and its aerial roots. Okay, so the second strategy is to provide your plant with a moss pool like you're seeing right here. If you haven't seen my video on how to build your moss pool, go check that video out. Super easy to follow. You can make a moss pool in about 10 minutes. And the wonderful thing about our moss pools is that they will provide a central piece of structure for our Monsteras to grow up, and we utilize sphagnum moss as a growing material for our aerial roots to root into. Case in point, this aerial root right here has found its way into the moss pool, and as it roots into that moss pool, it provides a little bit of extra strength and support for this nice thick stem that's growing right here. And that is one of the reasons why we love using a moss pool for our Monsteras. Now the third strategy actually involves taking those aerial roots and burying them in the soil of your pot. Let me show you what I mean. So here you can see an aerial root that as it reached the soil of the pot, I simply dug a little hole and I buried it in. And what you can do is you can use a paper clip to actually hold that root down in place. And that's going to keep that aerial root from popping back out. Now what will happen is this aerial root will start to create some adventitious roots beneath the surface of the soil, and of course that will help the plant to absorb extra nutrition, giving it more energy to continue to grow. And the fourth strategy actually involves taking those aerial roots and placing them into a nice mason jar full of water, and I like to add just a tiny bit of fertilizer. Now as you can see, those aerial roots have started to produce a lot of additional roots within that jar of water. You can see those are much finer roots than the original aerial root. Now, I know that there's a bit of controversy over this method, but I have found that it absolutely does help my Monstera to continue its growing process. The one main caveat that you do need to take note of is that you do have to continually fill it with fresh water every so often, which can be a little bit of a pain, causing some people to say that it's like caring for 2 plants. And if at any point you don't want to use that jar of water any longer, well, sorry sucker, you can't get around it. Well, actually you can get around it, and the idea is that once you have some nice adventitious roots started just like this, you can then go easily plant it right in
to this existing pot. And I find that when you actually are burying these aerial roots, once they have some of these additional roots on there, it actually is a lot easier to plant them in there. Because like I was showing you with that paper clip, it can be a little bit tricky to keep those aerial roots happy inside the pot of soil if they don't have any additional small roots to hold them down in place.
Now, another tactic that I've seen, but I have not actually utilized myself, is to actually take a whole extra pot, fill it with soil, and plant those aerial roots directly into another pot of soil so that you, in fact, do have two containers. And that is actually a really great way to provide nutrients to those aerial roots, and maybe a little bit easier, less maintenance than filling up your mason jar with water and or fertilizer every so often. So that is definitely another option that you can take. All right, so one final option. If you didn't like any of those 4 solutions that I was just offering, and the aerial roots are still considered an eyesore in your heart and in your mind's eye, well, then just take your shears and cut them off. That's really not going to harm your plant's growth or future in any way, shape, or form. They do provide a little bit of extra nutrition, and they will create support as if they are rooting into something. Otherwise, they're really not doing a whole heck of a lot just hanging around. However, I do personally feel that if they do provide maybe 0.5% of extra growth potential, that I'm just going to leave them on, and for that reason, I absolutely always leave my aerial roots on. But if you do not like the look of them and you want to get rid of them, then just cut them off, and you probably won't find any detriment to your plant's growth. Anyways, I hope this video helped you to understand what aerial roots are, what their purpose is, and what you can do for them, with them, as you're growing your Monstera deliciosa. If you have any further questions or comments or experiences on what you like to do with your aerial roots, absolutely leave a comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, join the channel, join the community. We're bringing new plant-related material every single week. And I always do my best to answer every comment, particularly if you have a very interesting comment that deserves a video. I always try to help the plant community with more and more plant-related videos and topics. Anyways, guys, I will catch you soon. Ciao.